The first thing I noticed was the smell. Garlic butter and cheap beer, seeping through the gap under my own front door before I'd even touched the handle. I'd been on a red eye from Toronto, 2 weeks of back-to-back client meetings finally behind me, and all I wanted was my own bed, my own shower, my own silence. I stood in the hallway of the 17th floor, rolling luggage beside me, key fob already in hand, and thought, that's not my smell. I pressed my fob to the reader. The light blinked green. I turned the handle. The door didn't move. The interior deadbolt was thrown. I stood there for a moment. Then I rang my own doorbell. My brother answered it. He was wearing my hoodie, the good one, the Roots one I'd bought at the airport, and holding a bottle of Molson like he'd been there all evening. He looked at me, the way you look at a pizza delivery driver who shows up 30 minutes late. Mildly annoyed, slightly inconvenienced. Hey, he said. Mum said you weren't back until Thursday. Today was Tuesday. I could see past his shoulder into my living room. His partner was cross-legged on my sectional, her shoes still on, watching something on my television. Their dog, a large, shedding husky I had never agreed to, was sprawled across my cream-colored area rug, the one I'd shipped from a shop in Gastown and paid $300 for. A suitcase was open in the hallway. Shoes were scattered by the door. On my kitchen counter sat a stack of grocery bags, a pile of mail that wasn't mine, and a half-empty bottle of red wine, sitting directly on the white marble with no coaster. Miles, I said, my voice came out very quiet, where are you sleeping? He shifted his weight. The second bedroom. It's not like you use it. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I looked at the dog. The building is no pets, I said. He's just visiting. His partner called from the couch without turning around. I stepped inside my own apartment. My mother appeared from the kitchen. She had a dish towel in her hand, and that particular expression she wore when she had already decided she was right about something and was waiting for you to catch up. Tired patience, that was the look. Like I was a slow student who needed things explained twice. Don't start, she said. Your brother lost his lease last month. The landlord sold the building, and the new owners aren't renewing month to months. He had nowhere to go. He has a phone, I said. He could have called me. We didn't want to bother you. She set the dish towel on the counter. You're always so busy. What she meant was, we made a decision about your property without consulting you, and now that you're here in person, it's too late to object without being the villain. I knew this move. I'd been watching her run it my whole life. My brother had dropped out of his plumbing apprenticeship 5 years ago. The same year I finished my business degree and started at the tech firm downtown. Since then, he'd done exactly 3 things with any consistency. Borrowed money he never repaid, moved apartments every 18 months when the rent went into arrears, and let our mother be his spokesperson. The woman who narrated every setback as someone else's fault, and every handout as something he was owed. My condo was not large. It was 840 square feet in a Yaletown high-rise, with a view of Falls Creek that I had worked 5 years to earn. I'd bought it at 29, after 2 years of eating lunches at my desk and taking every contract project my firm would give me. The down payment had wiped out my savings account completely. I remembered sitting in the notary's office, signing page after page, thinking, this is mine. This is actually mine. Nobody can touch this. Evidently I had been wrong about that. He can't stay here, I said. My mother's face shifted, not to anger, not yet, to something softer and more dangerous. Pity aimed outward, aimed at me. Look at you, she said. 2 bedrooms and you live alone. And your brother has nowhere to go. Do you know what it costs to rent anything in this city right now? A 1-bedroom in East Van is going for $2,200 a month. The strata bylaws prohibit unauthorized occupants, I said, and the pet policy is absolute. They've fined people in this building for exactly this. She waved a hand. No one's going to fine anyone. It's one dog, it's family. From the living room, the husky sneezed. My brother's partner laughed. My brother refilled his beer. I picked up my suitcase and walked to my bedroom. The room was untouched, at least. They hadn't gone in there. My bed was still made the way I'd left it. I sat on the edge of it, still in my coat, and stared at the window. Here was the problem, the real one, underneath the obvious one. If I called the building manager tonight and reported unauthorized occupants, the Strata Council would send a formal notice. Under the Strata Property Act in British Columbia, I was the owner of record, which meant I was responsible for the conduct of anyone occupying my unit. Fines would come to me first. I would then have to recover them from my brother through a civil claim. That meant months. That meant courthouse fees, and awkward family Christmases, and my mother crying at every dinner in between. More than that, if I called the police and had my brother removed, she would spend the rest of her life telling every cousin, every aunt, every person at church, that I had called the authorities on my own family. She would make sure I was the villain in that story until she died. I did not want to be the villain in a story I hadn't written. I wanted to be the author. I went back out to the living room. I sat down across from my mother at the kitchen table. I folded my hands. Okay, I said. She blinked. Okay? I've thought about it. You're right that I can't put them out tonight. I paused. But I can't have people living here off the books. My building insurance won't cover unauthorized occupants. If my brother trips and hurts himself, the liability comes back to me. If the dog bites someone in the elevator, I'm the one named in the claim. My mother started to speak. I kept going. There's an easy fix. I can draw up a temporary accommodation agreement. Something that covers me for insurance purposes, and makes clear that the building's rules apply to anyone staying here. My brother signs. He and his partner are covered. I'm covered. It's just paperwork. My brother shrugged from across the room. Sure, whatever. His partner glanced up. Does it cost anything? Nothing, I said. I'm not charging rent. It's a formality. My mother exhaled. The tension in her shoulders dropped. She believed me. She believed I had decided to be reasonable. To be the good daughter, the generous one. She picked up the dish towel again. I went to my home office, the second bedroom they were apparently now sleeping in, and opened my laptop. I did not write a rental agreement. A rental agreement would make my brother a tenant under the Residential Tenancy Act. In British Columbia, a tenant has significant protections. You cannot remove someone on short notice. You need a specific ground, a formal notice period, and often a hearing with the residential tenancy branch. I had spent 40 minutes on that red-eye flight, somewhere over northern Ontario in the dark, reading the RTB website on my phone. I knew exactly what I was not going to do. What I wrote instead was a temporary accommodation license agreement. The difference is not a technicality. A license gives a person permission to be on a property. It is not a tenancy. It does not grant possession. It is revocable. The moment the license is revoked, the person has no legal right to vie there than a stranger walking in off the street. The Residential Tenancy Act does not apply. There is no minimum notice period. There is no tribunal to petition. I had learned this from a property law seminar I'd attended 3 years ago for work, a Friday afternoon, in a conference room on Burrard Street, eating a sad boxed lunch, never imagining it would matter. I drafted the document carefully. The top clauses were plain and even generous. No rent required, use of common areas, access to building amenities during the license period. I described my brother and his partner as licensees throughout. I used that word 8 times. Then I buried the rest. Clause 7. The licensee acknowledges that accommodation is provided as a personal privilege, conditional on full compliance with all strata corporation bylaws and rules as amended from time to time. Clause 9. The license agrees to be solely responsible for any fines, penalties, or remediation costs levied against the strata lot as a result of their occupancy or the conduct of any persons or animals present at their invitation. Clause 11. The licensor reserves the right to revoke this license, at any time, with or without cause, effective immediately upon written notice delivered by any means including electronic communication. Clause 13. The licensee acknowledges that upon revocation of this license, their right to occupy the premises terminates immediately, and any continued presence shall constitute trespass under the Trespass Act. And the clause I was most careful about, Clause 14. The license consents to the continued operation of security cameras in all common areas of the strata lot, including the kitchen, living room, and entryway, for property asset protection purposes. I printed the document on my wireless printer. 4 pages double-spaced, easy to scan without reading. I walked back to the living room, set the pages on the coffee table, and handed my brother a pen. Standard stuff, I said. Short version is you're here as guests, not tenants, so there's no rent, but building rules apply the same as they do to me. Noise, the pet policy, the usual. What about the dog? His partner asked. As long as no one complains to the strata, nothing gets triggered. My brother signed without reading past page 1. His partner signed beside him. I signed last, with a date and time. I photographed every page with my phone and emailed the scans to myself. Then, I picked up my overnight bag. I'll give everyone a few days to settle in, I said. I'll stay with a friend. My mother beamed at me across the kitchen. That's very thoughtful of you. I drove to the Marriott on Robson Street and checked in. I ordered room service. I set up my laptop on the desk and opened the security app. I had installed the camera system 8 months earlier after a package was stolen from my hallway. 3 cameras, entryway, kitchen island, living room corner, all connected to cloud storage, time-stamped, continuous, all now operating with the written, witnessed consent of my licensees, per Clause 14. It took less than an hour. At 10:51 p.m., my brother opened the balcony door and lit a cigarette, standing half inside the unit with the smoke curling back into the room. The building's no smoking bylaw covered all strata lots and limited common property. It was posted in every elevator. It was in the welcome package every owner received at closing. It was absolute. At 11:20 p.m., the husky, whose name I eventually learned was Kodiak, climbed onto my sectional, turned a slow circle, and settled with his chin on the armrest. His partner scratched his ears. The cushion covers were dry clean only. At 11:44 p.m., my brother went to the kitchen and opened the junk drawer near the stove. He rifled through it. He pulled out an envelope, white, formal, with a return address in the top left corner that made me lean forward in my hotel chair. He looked at it for a long time. Then he put it back, pushed the drawer shut, and turned off the kitchen light. I zoomed in. The camera resolution held steady. The return address read, Coastal Property Management, Strata Corporation VR 1847, my building's management company. People do not hide junk mail. They hide things they are hoping will go away. I pulled up the Strata owner portal and logged in. 2 notices in my inbox, both from the past 10 days. The first was a bylaw violation notice under Strata Bylaw 3.4.1. No animal, bird or pet of any kind shall be kept in any strata lot or on limited common property. Complaint filed by a neighboring unit after the dog was observed in the building corridor. The fine schedule under the Strata Property Act allowed for $200 per day of continued violation following notice. The second was a noise complaint acknowledgement under Bylaw 5.2, citing unreasonable noise after 10 p.m., reported by 2 units below mine. Both notices were addressed to me, because I was the owner, because that's how it works. I sat with that for a moment. Then I poured myself a glass of water from the bathroom tap, and composed an email to the Strata manager. I'd met her once at an annual general meeting, efficient, precise, the kind of person who had read every bylaw twice and enjoyed enforcing them. I told her I had been out of province on business travel, had returned to find unauthorized occupants in my unit without my knowledge, and was in the process of addressing the violations as a matter of urgency. I requested the full complaint documentation for my records. She replied the next morning, at 7:09 a.m. Professional, thorough, and very clear on the accumulating fine schedule. I did the math over an Americano at a coffee shop on Davie Street. 11 days at the current violation rate. Pet bylaw fines retroactive to complaint date, $2,200. Noise violation penalties, $550. Total accruing daily until violation ceased, $250. I opened an email to my brother. Attached, the 2 Strata notices, the executed license agreement with Clause 9, highlighted in yellow, and a 1-page summary of the calculation. At the bottom I wrote, per Clause 9 of the agreement you signed, these costs fall to you. I'm not pursuing collection right now, but I want you to have the complete picture. The Strata manager has been notified and has an open file. Please let me know how you'd like to proceed. Then I opened my building's app. My unit ran a Nest thermostat locked to my account. The front door had a keypad linked to my phone. My brother had gotten the code from our mother, who had watched me enter it during a visit months ago. Smart outlets managed the kitchen and living room circuits, which I had originally set up for energy monitoring when I was trying to cut my hydro bill. I reset the door code from the coffee shop, sitting at a window-its table with a second Americano going cold beside me. Then I set the thermostat to 15 degrees. Then I cut power to the smart outlets in the kitchen and living room, which powered the television, the Wi-Fi router, and most of the counter appliances. I watched the camera feed. My brother walked to the thermostat at 9:08 a.m. and pressed buttons. Nothing changed. He went to the television. It wouldn't turn on. He checked the router. Dark. He stood in the kitchen in a t-shirt with his arms crossed, and I could see from how he was holding his shoulders that he was already furious. He called me. I watched him dial. I let it go to voicemail. He called our mother. I watched that too. 20 minutes later she called me. Then she texted. Then he texted. I read through them in order, over the dregs of my Americano. His messages were short and escalating. Hers were longer, cycling between worry and accusation. One read, "This is not a normal thing to do to your family." Another read, in all capitals, "Call me." I waited 1 full hour. Then I called her back. "The thermostat is set to low occupancy mode," I said, when she answered. "I have it on an energy-saving schedule for when I travel. I forgot to adjust it. I can take care of that." I paused. "But I need to talk to you first about the Strata notices." I walked her through it. The pet bylaw, the noise complaint, the fine schedule. The clause in the agreement my brother had signed. The total's currently sitting at $2,750 and climbing. The line went quiet. "He's your brother," she finally said. "He is, and I love him. But I'm the owner of record on this unit, which means these fines land on me first and I recover them from him second." My voice was even. I had rehearsed this in the hotel bathroom. "I'm not trying to cause a problem, Mum. I'm telling you what already exists. You could just Tell them the dog is gone. The strata manager has an open file. I can ask for mitigation if the violations stop today, but I can't make the file disappear. That's not how this works. A pause. My brother can fix this by removing the dog and keeping the noise bylaws from here forward. I can advocate for reduced penalties if he does that, but if the violations continue, I can't stop the process. She was quiet for a long time. He has nowhere to take the dog, she said. And her voice had gone small in a way that told me she was starting to understand that none of this was actually my fault. Then he needs to figure that out, I said. I can give him 48 hours. I turned the thermostat back up to 20 degrees. I restored the Wi-Fi. I left the television outlet off. My brother lasted 34 hours. I watched it on the camera feed from the hotel. His partner packed first. She was methodical about it, bags organized, zipped, lined up by the door within an hour. She had clearly done this before, moved out of places under pressure, and she had her own system for it. My brother moved slower. He threw things into his duffel bag. He said things I could hear in fragments on the audio, none of them kind. At one point he stood in the middle of my living room with his hands in his hair and stared at the ceiling. Then he picked up Kodiak's leash. At 11:42 a.m., they walked out. The door swung shut. The deadbolt clicked, and then there was nothing on the camera but my empty entryway and the afternoon light coming in through the balcony window. I checked out of the Marriott. I drove back across the bridge. I let myself in with the new door code and stood in the middle of my condo and breathed. The place was a mess in the particular way that someone else's occupancy always is, not vandalized, just subtly wrong. Throw blankets in the wrong place. Rings on the marble. A film of red wine dried in the bottom of a glass in the sink. Dog hair worked into the fibers of the sectional. I did a slow loop through the rooms, taking it all in, cataloging the small violations the way you do when something you've taken care of has been handled carelessly. Then I called a cleaning service. They could come the next morning. That evening, I sat at my kitchen island and composed a message to my mother. I didn't call her. I didn't want her to be able to manage my emotions in real time, to hear my voice waver and use it. I attached 4 things. The camera footage of my brother smoking inside the unit, the footage of Kodiak on the furniture, the formal strata violation notices, and the signed license agreement with Clause 9 highlighted. I wrote, I've asked the strata manager to close the file, given that the violations have stopped. The fines are technically still collectible under the agreement Miles signed, but I'm not going to pursue that right now. What I need you to understand is what actually happened here. You gave someone access to my home without my knowledge. You helped move people into my property without asking me, and when I came home, I was told it was done, and I had to accept it. I don't accept it. I'm not angry. I'm just done pretending this is a reasonable way to treat someone. I added one more paragraph at the bottom. If Miles needs housing support, BC Housing has a rental assistance program and a database of transitional housing resources. There are nonprofit services specifically for people in housing instability. I've included the link. That is where I'd suggest starting. I sent it, then I set her contact to Do Not Disturb. Not forever. I knew that even if she didn't, I just needed the quiet. The cleaning crew came at 8 the next morning. By noon the condo smelled like itself again. Cedar and the faint, clean cold that came off the water when the balcony door was open. I made a pot of tea. I stood at the window and looked out at False Creek, the kayaks tracking slow lines below, the mountains behind the city still holding snow on the upper ridges. I had bought this view. That was not a small thing. I had earned it in the most literal sense available to a person. Hours exchanged for dollars. Dollars assembled into a down payment. A down payment converted into title. Title into this particular angle of late afternoon light on water. Nobody had a claim to that except me. I had spent years believing otherwise. I had believed, the way you absorb things in childhood without choosing to, that my stability was a shared resource, that the people who loved me were also owed a portion of whatever I managed to build. I had sent the money transfers. I had absorbed the guilt. I had listened to the version of the story where I was selfish for having enough. I had stood between my brother and his consequences for so long that he'd stopped being able to see the consequences at all. I understood something, standing there with my tea. Boundaries don't accumulate. You don't earn them through years of patience and generosity until you've saved up enough goodwill to finally say no. You just decide they exist, and then you build your system accordingly. My brother is staying with a friend in Burnaby. My mother stopped texting after the 4th unanswered message. My father, who had always kept his distance from these dynamics, sent me an email 2 days later. 2 sentences. I heard what happened. Good for you. I cried reading it, which surprised me, and then I wrote him back, and we made plans to have dinner the following weekend. The strata manager sent a follow-up note confirming the file was closed and no further action was required. The dog, I understand, has been rehummed to someone with a yard out in Surrey. I updated the fob access list. I changed the door code for the second time. I bought a new throw blanket for the sectional, a dark green one that doesn't show lint, and folded it exactly the way I like, over the left armrest, ready for whenever I want it. Then I made dinner in my own kitchen, in my own quiet, with no one else's shoes on my floor. The most generous thing I ever did for my brother was stop making his choices disappear. He needed to live inside them. And I needed to stop being the wall between him and everything he'd earned. I sat down at my own table, with my own food, in the silence I had paid for and rebuilt and earned back, and I felt, for the first time in longer than I could track, completely at home.